Hey there, welcome to Connections That Matter. I'm Matt Stone, and this is the podcast where we have engaging and fun conversations with talented people from all over the world about the power of human connection in living a fulfilling, successful, and happy life. Really excited to kick off a new season that's going to be a little more topic driven. And the topic that was on my mind for this first episode of season 2 was something that we aren't doing so much of these days, and that is traditional public speaking events, with a live audience where you can actually see the people. And I was thinking about the loss of that and how important that is for many, both as speakers and as audience members, in terms of not just connecting with ideas and getting information or maybe being entertained, but also connecting with other people, whether it's the speaker or other people who are attending. So I thought, who better to talk to about public speaking and how to be a more effective public speaker than my good friend, dear friend, and colleague, Paddy Spruce. Paddy's based in Melbourne, Australia. He's been doing public speaking as a real expert and a tremendous talent for decades, but he's also been coaching other people how to be more effective public speakers, how to be authentic, how to use humor appropriately, and how to avoid some of the pitfalls in that, and how using media or not using media with their presentations. So I thought it would be great to spend some time with Paddy, and in addition to really knowing what he's talking about when it comes to public speaking, he's just a mensch. He's got incredible integrity, amazing authenticity, and he's a joy to spend time with. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation as much as we did. And one of the things that I've been thinking about with regard to you for a long time is we've talked a lot about leadership, we've talked about communication, we've talked about all these other things, but what we haven't spent a lot of time on is public speaking, which is, for leaders, it's one of the kind of primal or primary ways of communicating in a format that can be deceivingly difficult. And you've got a whole career of helping people with their public speaking. So I was just curious, kind of, how did you get into that as a specialty? What drew you to that? I mean, you're a rather introverted fellow. Not that introverts don't do public speaking, but
now you'd be surprised how many public speakers are introverts. Because I've seen them after the big presentations running away from the audience, just to recharge on their own.
I see. So how long have you been, involved with, public speaking as a skill?
Well, most of my working career, I worked with a federal government department who provided employment advice and employment services to people with disabilities, people who you would see as disadvantaged. And I was asked to give talks at various institutions on the prospects of people finding employment after rehabilitation, be that drug dependence or time in prison or part of a disadvantaged group like newly arrived refugees. And eventually people said, "Oh, can you come and speak to this group?" And I always thought it was in addition to what I normally did. I never saw it as very important. And then it sort of dawned on me that developing this skill would help me to do my main job better. So then I focused more on it, and instead of seeing it just as an adjunct to what I did, I thought this is another way of conveying a message. So I have a message and I can reach more people if I get better at doing this.
So when you started doing that, where did you go for your own development?
Well, I didn't. I just relied on the feedback that I got from the audiences, because I had no idea where you go to get assistance with improving your public speaking skill. I just thought it's just communication, it's all the same.
Yeah.
So I either got feedback from an audience or I recorded myself and did my own thing. You know, I thought, gee, that's a bit hard to do, but they were my only two ways in my mind of improving what I was doing at that time.
So you actually recorded yourself and would go back and watch yourself?
Well, no, it wasn't at those stages. I remember once I was speaking at a psychiatric hospital, and there wasn't any way they were going to allow
Wow, now
recording.
that's an engagement.
Well, to be truthful, there were people in the front row, and I weren't sure whether they were the inmates or the staff. And
You know, those places, I mean, sometimes the roles reverse, right? I mean,
well, it's a bit like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. You know,
exactly.
you thought, I'm not sure. So in that case, it was my taking a small tape recorder and recording myself. But you know, it's hard to get a sense of how you're doing because you can't get outside yourself.
Yeah, right. Wow. And what was it? I mean, what did you realize later that you were doing that you needed to improve on? I mean,
Well, clearly, I hadn't done a lot of work on the structure. Like I hadn't broken it down to what's my first impression or what first impression do I want to leave, and then what's the middle? You know, can I break it down into pieces, and then how should I finish? I think I was winging it.
yeah.
I think I thought if you have something to say, you just say it.
Yeah.
And that's true to an extent, but I didn't know about the structuring. I didn't know about storytelling. I didn't know about being vulnerable.
And I mean, nowadays, there's been that whole, what is it? Pikachka, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It came from Japan, but a lot of imagery, TED Talks, of course, that's taken over the whole world.
You bet.
Is that, I mean, what do you think of TED Talk as a format?
I think it's a wonderful format. I know one of the TED franchisees here in Australia, and they put the people through a lot of hoops before they allow them on stage.
They do.
They really have to be good, and they move beyond scripting. So they look like they're not scripted. They look like they're improvising, but they all are like any good actor. They look like they're winging it, but they're not.
Right.
So I think TED do a wonderful job, and I enjoy watching them, and I always get lost in what I'm hearing. I can't sit back and be critical because it's too interesting for me to detach and say, oh, that could have been better.
Yeah, they are really, I mean, I have a friend who did one recently in Israel, and she was telling me about the process. And actually, a couple different people recently kind of shared with me the process, and it was sort of interesting because they would, it was kind of hard to hear the feedback at first because they really skewered her. At least that's how she felt.
Yeah.
But then in the end, it was like, oh wow, you really helped me because you helped me refine my message. Yeah.
Well, my sense is that that's probably the best forum I've seen. It's better than some of the professional speakers who people pay a lot of money to see. Because some of them are just doing their thing.
Yeah.
Whereas in TED, I think in a kind way, they've been dismantled and then put back together. I mean, I know that's a medieval way of forming someone by taking them back to nothing. TED doesn't do that, but the people running TED seem to be kind about what they do, but they also know what the audience wants.
Yeah. And that audience connection, I mean, that's, it's like when you see a speaker who is really connecting with an audience effectively, that's a lot harder to do than it appears, I think.
Well, it's pretty hard to do if you're in the same room.
Yeah.
So imagine doing it in front of an audience where you can't even see the people in the second or the third row.
Right.
But that's what people do on stage all the time. For you to believe that whoever's playing in Les Mis is genuine, you get lost in the authenticity of it, but that's clearly not what's happening. It's it's a figment, but it's so beautifully done that you're convinced that, you could be in tears watching the show, and you forget that they've been doing this every night for the last year.
Mm. Who do you like? I mean, when you see these TED Talks, whether it's on screen or in person, like, who impresses you, I guess?
Well, generically, it's someone who is a legitimate expert in their field of endeavor,
Mm-hmm.
like someone who does know what they're talking about, but can present it simply. So they're experts without an ego or without a need for recognition as an individual. They want their message to come across because they know it will benefit you. So then it doesn't matter whether they're male or female or young or old or whatever. It's like they are committed to bringing the message to you for your benefit. And I just know some wonderful speakers who do that all the time. But there's not one that I would hold out. Like, some of them clearly have had very little training in speaking, but their passion comes across.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of carries them. It's enough to carry them over the threshold.
Because the ones that don't make it are the ones who have read the book yesterday and they do a book review, but they're good actors, and they don't quite make it.
Right. Right. It's almost like if you're a smooth orator, you could be fooled into thinking that was going to carry the day. That was going to make you a good TED Talk speaker or a good presenter, but actually that's only, a fraction of the skills that you need to be able to.
Well, my sense is that the authenticity is probably number one. So when I see a world-renowned actor, there's a sense that I know he's acting. There's something about it, apart from the fact that his name's Anthony Hopkins or Brad Pitt or something.
Yeah,
I know that he's a damn good actor.
Yeah, right.
But it's not real.
Yeah, yeah. So, I don't know. What does a person do if they don't have a coach or whatever, and they want to start working on public speaking? What would be the first thing you would do now, looking back?
Well, I think I'd get a bigger mirror.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, I would look at myself a bit more closely.
Yeah.
I would ask, why on earth am I doing this? Am I doing this for me or for them? And then I would do whatever it takes for me to identify who on earth I am, because I'm not the speaker. I'm someone who speaks. So I'm not what I do. And I think, I don't know how other people get to that point of saying, who on earth is in here? Or why am I doing this? And who am I? And I know that sounds a bit philosophical, but to me, authenticity and genuineness are concrete. They're the foundation. And after that, you go ahead and develop the skills, but you don't do it in the reverse. You don't say, I'll develop the skills and that will make me into somebody. Well, it won't, because you already are somebody.
Right.
So what would I do? I think I would get a coach and say, what do you think?
Yeah.
Do I have what it takes? And do you think I'm ready? And do you think I know myself well enough? Because when you're on stage, you are vulnerable. You are exposed. There's nowhere to hide. If you're in front of a large audience, there is nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
So be careful what you look like, when you take your clothes off.
Right. Right. Indeed. Just don't do it on stage.
Just don't do it.
Now, you've worked with, what kind of people have you worked with over the years? I mean, I imagine you've worked with a lot of different types of people.
Predominantly males who have been promoted into a position that's one step beyond what they're comfortable with in relation to speaking. They could have been accountants or lawyers or, whatever profession, but they've been put in a position where they may not have been aware that they will be required to speak to an audience. Now, it may be 10 people, it may be 50 people. And then it dawns on them. And that's when I think the majority would probably contact me. Like I'm working with a guy now who is a builder. He started off work as a carpenter. Now he has his own building company. And the association that he belongs to have asked him to become the president of this association. It's an honorary position. And he has to speak to an AGM next March. And all his peers know him as a builder.
Right.
They don't know that he does any speaking because he doesn't.
Right.
But he's going to get up in front of all the members and they're going to say, what are you doing up the front? You're just a builder. And he's going to have to convince them that he has got some passion. He's on a mission. Like March, where we may be coming out of the lockdown. Now, all these guys, their businesses have suffered. So he will need to tell them that he would like to help them move into the new normal. And they'll have to believe that he has got genuine passion. And he's going to have to articulate in a way that's better than he has before, like his choice of words, his vocab. It's a bit of a journey because he hasn't got a big vocab.
Sort of. I was just thinking about the difference between influencing others from the stage versus influencing someone in a one-on-one context. And it's different, isn't it? I mean, it's almost like the social validation of watching someone on a stage and watching other people react to you.
Yeah.
Is a different kind of power that you get from that influence. Is that right?
Well, if you're the third party, it's very different. But if you're the person speaking, it's not different. You need to form a relationship with the audience as if you were speaking to one person. Because that's what people do on television, and that's what they do in the movies. You think they're talking to you.
Right.
Like, you don't want to think they're talking to 100 million people around the world.
Right.
You think, well,
Right.
what's the point?
Right.
And I guess it must be a little bit like, a barrister or someone in court. You need to speak to the jury as if they were one person. And so it's very similar to one-to-one, the techniques, but of course it's not, because your focus is spread all over the place. So who do you look at? The good people look at a small group of people in front of them. The clumsy ones look at the back wall.
Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of like, no, you said the clumsy ones look at the back wall?
Well, they look clumsy because they look like they're talking to the wall. Like if I'm in the front row and he's looking 10 feet above my head, I think, well, there's no one 10 feet above my head. Are you trying to avoid me,
Well, when I see something like that, I just assume that they don't know their stuff. They're nervous, because, basically
Correct.
They're just trying to hang on, not pee their pants, and get through the process that they memorized.
Correct. Well, it's like someone being interviewed on television and they stare at the camera when they're not supposed to. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's why the TED Talk, the mastery of your subject, and so that you're never unmoored in exactly why you're there and what you're trying to convey. Just like any kind of elite performer, then you can kind of operate.
And the TED guys have got 18 minutes.
Yeah, right.
To the second.
Right.
And I haven't seen a TED Talk where they stumbled over the timing. It's like they've done it so often.
Yeah.
They've probably got people helping, but they finish on time and they finish with impact. And more often than not, the audience will applaud, if not stand and applaud.
Yeah.
And this guy has rehearsed this, or this woman, many, many times until it feels a bit fresh.
How has your sensibility about use of visuals and other media, sounds and, other things that are now at our disposal more easily with technology, how has that kind of evolved over the years as you've worked with speakers?
Well, some want to hide behind it. Some want you to focus on the visuals and not them. So the visual becomes the focus, the visual becomes the center, and the person doing the speaking moves off to one side. Well, they may as well put up a movie and turn the lights out.
Yeah.
I think the visual, the auditory, the props, they're there to help you. They're not there to replace you.
Yeah.
And I've clearly seen people say, "Oh, could we dim the lights?" And they put on several minutes of something visual. Well, I didn't come for that. I could have done that at home in my lounge
Yeah.
room.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's the same with putting a lot of words on the screen and reading them. That looks like remedial reading for someone who can't read properly.
Yeah.
I can read it on a bad day about 1,000 words a minute.
Right.
Now, if you're going to articulate what's on the screen at 150 words a minute, I'm done before you start.
Right. Right.
And now I'm bored.
Yeah. Wow.
But just
yeah,
to finish, I saw a TED talk where it's a fabulous TED talk on neuroplasticity and brain and whatever. And I don't know if you've ever seen it, but the woman had an actual brain in her hand.
I haven't seen that one. She's
pulled
holding
it out
an
of a
actual
jar,
brain.
and it looked like an octopus. It had all the bits hanging off it, and
my Lord.
she had gloves on. And she said, "Believe me, I'm a neurosurgeon." And then you thought, "My God, she does know what she's talking about."
Yeah, she's holding.
It's slightly off-putting, but if you're going to talk about brains, I think you need to have a brain there, don't you?
What a powerful visual image, huh?
It was awesome. You could almost hear the audience suck in when she said, "Look what I've got here."
Oh my God, I think that would probably shock me. I'll have to find that one. That's pretty good. Wow. What's the kind of feedback that you find yourself giving the most when you're working with people?
Most. Well, I was coaching a guy today, and the feedback was, "You're speaking as if you want to get this over with, rather than you have a message to get across." Like there was a hurriedness, there was a urgency about him wanting to get through it without breathing. So I think he found it. He had never considered that he should slow it right down and then emphasize the important bits. So I said, "What are the important bits?" And he said, "Oh, good question." He hadn't decided which were the important bits.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of feedback that I find myself giving initially. They think the information in and of itself is sufficient, and they neglect that the way it's presented is probably just as important as what is said.
Right. Well, plus nobody's really saying anything new. I mean, none of us. It's really, are you delivering the message in a way that helps people connect with it in a new way or a more meaningful way than the next guy?
Correct.
Yeah.
And do you want them to do anything with the information, or you just want them to put it in the library?
I mean, yeah, what are they doing with it? Exactly. What action, how is it going to enhance their life?
Correct.
Yeah.
Because the Greeks would have said it a long time ago, and we just keep saying it.
I know. There's really, what else is coming up for me now is how powerful the use of the pregnant pause.
Yep.
On stage. I wonder, talk a little bit about that, and when should you use the pause for the maximum effect? How do you know that a pause is needed?
Well, I would insert a pause where I wanted you to think about what I had just said, or I would want you to get excited about what's coming. So I'm pausing so that you can go into yourself, maybe even stop thinking for a moment, and create a vacuum that I can fill. So how long should I pause? As long as it takes. Now, if I pause too long, you might think I've lost my place.
Right.
So it's how I behave during that pause will indicate to you whether I've lost my way or I'm deliberately pausing for effect.
Right.
Because like a long pause, you could say, "Look, I am going to tell you something now that will make a profound difference to your life. Are you up for this? You know,
more up for this than ever. My God, that kind of pregnant pause. I'm ready to give birth. My goodness. Yeah.
But I've seen people pause where they've lost their way, and
Yeah.
then you think, oh, the poor guy is now dying.
Right.
Because, and it's the same pause, but somehow I know what the pause means.
You know, it's fascinating to me how, and it's not a matter of an intellect at all, but how the way that human beings process information, we need things to be a little bit slower. We can process it at a very topical level. Okay, yes. That's a bright blue color. He's wearing a red tie. He's talking about leadership. He's talking about a story about his kid. Yeah. But those connections that go 2, 3, 4, 5 layers deeper.
Yeah.
You know, we need the air to breathe for our brains to really start making all those connections. Yeah. I mean, that's.
Well, but I think we've got an exquisitely complex mind. I think the mind goes beyond the brain.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a case to be made for saying the mind is also in the body. So it's embodied because you can calculate in other parts. And so if you want a message to connect with somebody's mind, just give them a moment or two, because there's a lot of connecting going on superficially. Right. As you say, no, not much. But if you want them to really make sense of what you're saying at more than the superficial level, you're going to have to go a little bit slower and maybe repeat without getting caught. Because as you say, you mentioned pausing. It's like you're eating and you have a break to digest.
Right.
You wouldn't just keep eating non-stop, but eating is like giving people information. And of course, it's on you interpret it according to your history. Mm-hmm. So I've got to give you time to connect.
Right.
And I think every description you make of something is not accurate. It's like, I don't see how words can possibly accurately describe how you feel. And if we both say sad, we both think we know what it means, but I don't know what you mean by sad.
Absolutely. Right. Yep.
And then we go into a culture like Japan. Well, what on earth would they make of this compared to what I would make of this,
Yeah.
Is that polite or is that impolite? Again, I've got to give you time.
Mm-hmm. I don't know why my brain is going this direction, but I was just thinking about how the best stand-up comedians it's a form of public speaking, but it's almost like a conversation that they're having with you, because they need you to buy into their whole baseline assumptions, basically. And then they pull the rug out from under you repeatedly, which is the way a joke is formed. I lead you down a path and then I kind of switch gears on you. Yeah. But you've got to buy into them. You've got to believe in them. And I'm wondering what lessons you can learn from comedians when you're thinking about how to connect beyond, being humorous. What are some of the techniques that cross over into public speaking?
Well, I went to a humor coach, and he had written several books on the structure. And you pointed out one of the most obvious structures, which is 1, 2, and then twist.
Right.
So, my husband would never leave me because he loves me. He relies on me and he's lazy.
Yeah, exactly.
So boom, what's going on?
What? Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom. So there's a surprise in there. And for some bizarre reason, we laugh when we get surprised. We go 1, 2, 4. And we think, oh, that's funny. I don't know.
We like to be tricked.
Yeah. But
we love to be tricked. In fact, like the Perfect Liars Club, I don't know if you've ever seen that, where you tell stories and one of them's a liar.
No, I
The
haven't
audience,
seen that.
that was this great format, and they've got it in multiple cities. And basically, like usually it's like four people on the stage.
Yep.
Each of them tells an outrageous story. One
Yep.
of them is telling a lie.
Yep.
The other three are telling true stories. And the audience delights in not guessing which story, of being wrong. If the audience could really figure out which story was right, it would kill the whole mood. The
Oh,
audience
absolutely.
wants to be wrong, and there's something about us that we like to be tricked.
Yep.
We sort of enjoy it. I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No.
that was sort
But
of
I
coming
think we
off.
also we like a parody of we'll take a world leader and then
Yeah.
a comedian will make himself or herself look exactly like the world leader
Right.
and speak a lot like the world leader, and it's hysterically funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's very close to the real thing. It's like there's a line there that you cross, and I suppose that's sarcasm, isn't it? It's like irony, where
Right.
you say, "Oh, I'd be so excited, I'd be beyond myself with excitement," and
Right.
he means the exact opposite.
Right.
So I think humor is very clever. Someone like a Robin Williams, he's just manic. It's like you're watching someone on stage who,
Right.
with thought, would think, "Gosh, is he well?" But funny. And then you've got the really clever scripted ones who put so much work into every single word, and it's a story. And as you say, we like stories, and we do like stories where we can laugh. And if we're up for it, stories where we laugh at ourselves. Like if you're in a group and you're American or Australian and they're making fun of your group,
Right.
You sort of have to relax, don't you?
Yeah. I suppose so. Yeah.
Because otherwise you say, "Well, look who's talking, we defeated you," and
Oh
you
yeah.
start to
Yeah.
fight
Yeah.
back instead of saying, "Come on,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
we're all the same."
But I'm wondering what, you can get yourself into some real trouble
Oh yeah,
with humor in a public speaking,
absolutely.
thinking you're the comedian and you're going to go in and you're going to get a laugh like you're Eddie Murphy, or somebody. Yeah. I mean, it's almost like one should be very careful with the comedic placement. Yeah. I mean,
Well, but
there's
the
nothing
only,
worse than watching someone try and pull off humor and it doesn't work. It's the most uncomfortable thing ever.
it's grim. But
Yeah.
to me, the only safe place is to make fun of yourself.
Ah, right. Yeah.
Because you want to, all other humor, someone goes down,
Yes.
and that's funny, providing
Yeah.
you're not one of those people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know when people make fun of Australians, if I'm in a good mood, I think it's really funny. But if I'm not in a good mood and I'm tired, I don't like it very much.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like criticizing your family. I mean, it's like,
Correct.
yeah. Oh, those spruces. Oh, the spruces. All of them. They're an insufferable bunch,
But humor is very, very clever. If someone can go for an hour non-stop, that's pretty damn good. They've done a lot of work.
Oh,
They've
yeah.
developed a lot of techniques that one thing they say reminds them of another and another. And they've scripted it down to a fine art of what works. I know the next night, if it didn't work on night one, on night two, they'll adjust it. And
Right.
night three, they'll adjust it.
Right.
And also humor, you could change the world. If you can get people to laugh at something that was terribly serious and frightening, it's not so frightening anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I remember a lovely movie. It was an Italian movie, and it was about a father and his son who happened to be Jewish and were sent off to a concentration camp. And the father said to the son, no, this is a holiday camp, And
Wow.
and the little kid believed him.
Wow.
And he said, look at all those people having fun. And look, and it was dark, but you could see the kid was seeing it through his father's eyes.
Yeah.
And his father kept pointing out things that, I know it sounds dark, but he said, what else can I do? The reality
Right.
is appalling here.
Yeah.
And then we get, springtime for Hitler. And so people would look at some of historical atrocities and say, let's revisit them and get rid of some of the venom.
Mm. Take the fangs out a little bit. Yeah.
Just whip out one of the fangs.
Yeah.
And the same with having a clown in a hospital.
Right.
This little kid's in hospital and one of the doctors dresses up as a clown.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away the credentials of the doctor. The doctor is still a doctor, but he's a funny doctor.
I'll tell you what, I'm one of those people. If I saw a clown come into my hospital room, I would be pushing the button for security in 2 seconds. I'd be like, get this clown out of here. The clowns just scare the hell out of me. I don't know why. Too many horror movies, I guess. I don't know what it is.
There have been a few horror movies with
John
clowns.
Wayne Gacy just came into my room, I mean, this is a guy who knows how to use a scalpel, geez.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's an interesting topic. One of my friends and someone who's been on the podcast, Christiane Bruce, she does a lot of improv and stand up and different comedy things and storytelling. She works with leaders in both like kind of, corporate business context and comedy context in terms of storytelling and comedy and things like that. So I've started to learn a little bit more from her, but one of the things that I got to know a little bit more about was when it comes to comedy, never punch down.
No.
To your point, always, if you're going to punch up.
Yeah.
But never punch down. I imagine that would work. That's also true in any kind of public speaking situation. Yeah.
Unless you're in a particular group and you know everything they know and you know all their values, you might get away with stuff.
Right.
But you can't move out of that group then.
Right. You're stuck in the group. Yeah.
You're stuck with that group and that humor, and you know what's sacred and you know what's not sacred.
Yeah.
You can't leave that group.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're old, you can probably make jokes about old people. And if whichever group you're in, you'd be allowed to get away with it. But if you're not in that group, God help you.
So keep the humor in the self-effacing area. It's got to be,
Correct.
You can poke fun at yourself, your receding hairline, your, whatever it is you want to joke about yourself, but don't make it about anybody else.
Well, that's probably low risk. I'm not saying it's no risk, but it's low risk.
Lower risk.
High risk is punch down, make fun of. Around the world, there are countries that make fun of other countries, and I think we're past that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've all said things in meetings and different contexts that you go, you cringe at yourself and go, gee, where did that even come from, Yeah. And, none of us came out of a fully enlightened environment. So you just have different things that are in your head. So, hopefully you do it in a space where people know your heart and they can give you feedback and you can not take it to a stage.
But I mean, you can get very clever humor that relies on vocab and double entendres or whatever.
Right.
Or you could have humor where you just fall over, or you pretend to wet your pants or something. Like it's pretty wide, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, so here's one for you. So when you're looking at your own, let's say you record yourself, what are the limitations of giving feedback to yourself? I mean, because, it's kind of like, when you listen to your own voice, I mean, it's hard to listen to yourself. It's hard to look at yourself. It's hard to listen and look at yourself. I mean, if it's hard to listen to yourself, then watching and listening at the same time. So what do you recommend as a best practice for reviewing your own performance, if you will?
Probably not reviewing your own performance on your own. I think I agree with you. You get locked into, I don't like my own voice, or I think my own voice is wonderful. There's severe limitations as to how far you can go without having a trusted other, someone who knows you, who knows what you can and can't take, who could help you and can do it in a way that that's kind. Mm-hmm. Like they have a kind intention. Mm. They're wanting to help you. They're not trying to enlarge their own ego at your expense. Now, I think that's a rare person. Hopefully in the world of coaches, it's not rare.
Mm.
But I suspect some of the people coaching just want you to become like them. Speaking, I mean.
Oh, I would say that applies to a whole range of quote unquote coaches. I mean, there's sort of this segment of coaches who are just total egomaniacs.
Yeah.
And you run into those from time to time, and you just smile and stroke their ego a little bit and move on. But yeah.
But that's where you would damage someone if you said, look, when on stage, you must never do the following, as if there are some right and wrongs. You must never do this with your hand, and you must never say this. Well, I think they're telling you their experience and their dogma. And I think what you do is what works.
Yeah.
Not what they say works.
Right.
So
well,
it is.
It goes back to authenticity.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, it goes back to authenticity too. I mean,
absolutely.
What you can get away with if you are being genuine is just such a vastly different thing than if you're putting on a performance.
Yeah.
You know.
But the audience have to decide you're genuine to leave that door open.
Yeah.
If they have any hints about your being authentic, if they think there's anything phony about you, you're not going to get away with very much.
So what are the specific things when you are in the audience as a viewer? What are the specific things that you notice consciously?
As a viewer,
as an audience member, that say to you, this person is authentic?
Well, I don't know what you're thinking. So I have to go on, as you well know, not your intention, but your behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So if I see incongruity between what you're saying and what you are doing, a little red light starts to flicker.
Yeah. Yeah.
And obviously, if you contradict yourself during a presentation, that's a big red light.
So the audio has to match the video.
Absolutely. The movement has to match the values underpinning it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you look like a hypocrite.
Right. Right.
Like if you were talking about relaxation and you look stressed, you know?
That's kind of not fair, though. I mean, you could be really stressed out, in the moment.
Yeah. And if you're talking about health and fitness and your body mass index
is older than your age. Yeah, it's higher than your age. If your BMI is higher than your age and you're talking about fitness, you got a problem.
Well, I remember I was speaking at a conference in the middle of Australia, and in the afternoon we went out to Uluru or Ayers Rock, which is a climb.
Right.
And one of the main speakers spoke about families and raising children and whatever. And he had his family with him. I was walking behind them, and they were not having a pleasant day,
Wow.
So I thought, well, I guess I was judging him, and I shouldn't have been, but I thought he shouldn't have taken his family with him if he was going to talk about the best way to raise a healthy, loving family, because it didn't appear that way.
You didn't get the energy vibe of healthy
Correct.
And loving. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's like seeing someone who's talking about kindness and being gentle and empathy or something, and then the kid makes a noise and they scream at them and say, "Oh, sorry," and they're back. Wait, I've seen that a few times on Zoom or whatever. Yeah. Totally.
Well, look, since I'm being judgmental, I remember another time where a big time overseas speaker said, "Look, I'm going to be hanging around, big audience. I'll hang around for a little while afterwards if there are any questions." And so I hung around. And as he was coming off the stage, I said, "I have a question." And he said, "Look, just before I answer your question," he said quite loud, "Does anyone else want to hear my answer? I've been asked a question."
Uh-huh.
It's almost like just talking to me wouldn't have done it for him.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah. And it's also saying that what I'm about to say is worth so much.
Look, it's profound. So I don't want to waste it on
I don't want to waste it on you. Yeah. Oh,
So I left. I didn't hear his answer. I just left him with several people and thought, I don't care what you say now.
Yeah, you've undermined your whole message. Yeah.
That's what I thought.
No, that's a classic. I mean, there's a million examples like that. Not even
Yeah.
in public speaking, but in meetings where people say, "Well, I don't usually take these meetings."
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh, really? Wow."
But I reckon fear is the real inhibitor, the real enemy. I think that's the river, that's the gorge to cross. Is, can you not get rid of it, but can you speak with it?
Kind of let it. I like to think of that's really powerful, Patty. I like to think of it as, yeah, with it. It's sitting there next to me, but it's not. It isn't suffocating.
Give it some space, like give it a
Yeah.
chair, social distancing, like leave it 1.5 meters, because it's going to be in your ear.
Yeah.
Because the alternative is to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? I've seen people have a few drinks before presenting, and sometimes a few too many to get rid of it.
Right.
I've known people to take beta blockers. I've seen a whole range of people trying to get rid of the fear until they are fearless. And I think fearless is foolish.
I just wanted to leave a pause there because that was really powerful.
Thank you.
What do you think about when a speaker comes up and says, "I'm nervous"? How does that?
On stage?
Well, sometimes that can be very effective. I mean, I saw there was something on television the other day where it was like a public forum and someone was asking a question to a politician or something. And this person was very eloquent and they were you would never know that they were. And she said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm really nervous." Yeah. And it just sort of cut the tension.
Yeah.
And then she was great. And it was almost like she had to say that in order to get past that hurdle. I feel like that's a pretty powerful device sometimes.
No, man, I think that's very perceptive on your part, that you could differentiate between she said it because she needed to say it so she could get on with it, rather than she said it for effect.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be genuine. It can't just be for effect.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I heard a person being interviewed recently on the radio, and he was talking about anxiety. And the interviewer said, "Well, let's talk." And he said, "I need to tell you, I'm having an anxiety attack at this very moment."
Okay.
And he said, "I would like to rush out of this studio, but I'm going to stick around." And the interviewer said, "Well, it's not apparent." Well, he said, "Believe me, it's going on inside me, and it's taking every tiny bit of my energy to stay in this studio with you."
Gag me with a spoon. I could throw up just, yeah, I wouldn't buy that for a second.
No.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay.
So but I agree with you, genuine. Like sharing a little, good, but get on with it. Too much. And what are we having, therapy now? You're going to use the audience as your therapist?
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I tell you what, it seems like, what's your favorite thing? Because you've done coaching, training, consulting, MCing, which is a different derivative skill set, but you're an incredible MC as well. I've seen you do it.
Thank you.
What's and public speaking, of course. So what's the thing that gives you the most satisfaction?
Well, I'd have to lock into the present. And currently it's coaching. I think earlier in my career, when I thought I was still expanding, it was speaking. Wow, this is like breast thumping stuff. Mm-hmm. But now that I'm contracting, there's like almost an urge or a need to help other people, which wasn't so apparent in the early part of my career. So I did training first, then I moved into doing speaking, then I really looked for keynote presentations, then I quietly started to move towards coaching people, but I was a bit reluctant because I thought, gee, they could end up as good as me. That
the ego.
How do we both have? It's competition almost.
Yeah.
And then now that, if I were coaching someone and they pulled out, yeah, I could go on stage and do it, but I'd rather be helping someone else develop and put back what I've taken out. Like people have been so kind and helpful to me over my whole career that I feel a strong obligation to put back in.
Yeah.
And whether they can afford the fee or not has become irrelevant to me.
Mm-hmm. So if somebody wanted to engage you as a coach, what would they do?
Well, they'd first decide what they want to get from me and how they would know they're making progress, and then give me a call and say, can you help me? And then I won't accept unless I think I can help you.
Right.
I've been coaching a young woman who had a stroke 13 years ago now, and she couldn't speak.
Right.
And we've stayed in touch for no fee now, and she's now become a full-time speaker helping other people who've had a stroke, and her speech is still slurred.
Amazing.
And she's in pain. Whenever it's cold weather, she's in pain. Her brain can't differentiate. But she says it's way too important to not be telling people her story. And it's lockdown. We still get together online, but we would have lunch about once a month just to see how she's going. And to me, at my funeral, I'd like someone to mention that. It's something I've done. No, not you. It's something I've done in my life that I thought was really worthwhile.
Oh, wow. Oh, I mean, I'm moved just hearing it. Yeah, that's incredible. What an incredible gift. All right. Well, so people can call, a lot of people don't call these days, Paddy.
No.
They send emails. Is there an email they can contact you at?
There is. It's my name. It's Paddy at Paddy, Paddy at Paddy Spruce, spruce like the tree, SPRUCE.
Yep.
.com.au.
Now, AU is Australia, and so do you work with people outside of Australia too?
Yeah, what the hell?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter anymore, does it?
No, right? So I guess anybody could call you.
Yeah, but not at 2 a.m., huh?
Not at 2 a.m. So please check your time zones. Well, I just think that I'm just a big proponent of hiring people who have a lot of experience, and for the specific thing that you're trying to do. I mean, I'm working on some brand strategy right now, and I've got this amazing brand strategist who's super experienced and amazing. I've worked with comedians, storytellers, just all kinds of different people, and on specific different things, initiatives, and I find it so valuable. And of course, I worked with you a fair amount too, and you're an incredible talent. But more than the talent, it's the human being inside, that's using the talent to convey something authentic. I think that really resonates with me. I think that's really where the power comes in.
Well, I think that's why we're speaking to each other, is that I find that same connection in you. I think you're either a very well-trained or a natural speaker, because the genuineness comes out of you. When you open your mouth, you have a very rich, resonant way of presenting, but your authenticity trumps that. Dare I say trump?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. My ears are getting great at tuning things out. Well, listen, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for that. And thanks for sharing just some of your wisdom from
thank you.
Years of working with people in a very genuine way too. So
it's not my wisdom, Matt. I got it from the Greeks.
From the Greeks. Truly, there's nothing new under the sun. I mean, really, if you think you're sharing something truly new, you're full of yourself. It's just not,
you haven't read enough, have you?
You haven't read anything, Yeah, you've looked in that gigantic mirror too much. Yeah.
Well, just finishing, my wife is a singer and a musician, and she writes music. And in a former life, I remember she wrote a song, and she said, "What do you think of this song?" And I said, "It sounds a lot like the Beatles."
Oh, and your marriage survived that.
No, she said, "Oh my God." She said, I thought I invented it. And I said, "Well, it does sound like one of their songs, you know. I think every generation does that, don't they? They think, oh, it's me. And you think, well, maybe it's you.
Yeah. Yeah. You made it your own. You made it
your own. No, that's it.
Oh, my goodness. What a good time. Hey, thanks, Paddy.
Lovely to talk to you, Matt, as always.
As always.